another band that we'll be seeing in the summer. That's Green Day, along with Weezer and Fall Out Boy at London Stadium. I think it's July, June, one of those. Anyway, we'll be there. Anyway, back to the show. This is the Meridian Sports Show live on 107 Radio
I hope
FM.
we'll be there if you can get the month right.
Hope. Do you reckon? Yeah. Maybe I should check that first and what date. And I know where it is.
Okay.
Just got to make sure I get the right date.
Good start.
Yeah, I think it's a Friday. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Our next guest tonight is Ben McFadyean, who is the president of the Borussia Dortmund Supporters Club in London. Good evening, Ben.
Hi, Jay. Good evening. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I hope I pronounced your surname correctly there.
Yes.
Fantastic.
My name Ben McFadyean, London, Borussia Dortmund Fan Club, London.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. It's great to talk to you. I'm fresh off the back of my first trip to Dortmund at the weekend, which I've been gushing about before we went to the news at 9 o'clock and probably bored these guys to tears here. But I just wanted to kick off and chat to you about the Supporters Club and how it came about and how you became president.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you sent me an email just before you went out to Dortmund to watch them against Freiburg, the 1-0 win this weekend. A very hard-fought 3 points, but 3 points nonetheless. And a completely sold-out stadium yet again, 82,000, and amazing atmosphere, as I've heard from the 10 supporters from the club that went down there, and I hope you had a pretty good time as well.
Fantastic time, really good. Yeah, really enjoyed the first fan experience, and it lived up to everything that I've been told about German football, and particularly Borussia Dortmund, which was great. Can't wait to get back out there, to be quite honest.
Yes, excellent. Well, I see that you've joined the fan club, so we'd love to help you to get some tickets for another game, as long as it's not Bayern or Schalke.
So how did the
fan club?
Fan club? Yeah, how did it all start?
Well, my stepdad was from Dortmund, and growing up, and basically I moved as an English kid. I moved out to Germany. There was a lot of British Army out there in the 1980s, up until about the mid-1990s, basically a lot of the squaddies kids started going to Dortmund, to the Signal Iduna Park, to watch games, and on the weekends, because there basically isn't that much else to do if you're stationed overseas, and just, they brought with it that sort of English football flair, it just kind of grew from there. When I came back to England, I moved back here to go to university. I just wanted to start up a kind of, something to bring together German people and English people who love Borussia Dortmund and German football in general. And so we just found a bar in London, and just started meeting up. And then along came the internet, and then we just created a web presence and Facebook group. And Facebook has now got about 20,000 people on it. So It's amazing to think that so many English people really like BVB, as the club are known as. And I think Jadon Sancho has helped enormously, because he was the first English player to sign for Dortmund in 110 years. So, yeah.
Definitely. And from my experience going out the weekend, it's not just an English interest in Borussia Dortmund. There seems to be a lot of fan clubs from around the world that follow the yellow and black.
Dortmund, they've got 20 million followers on Facebook, which is something quite extraordinary. Yeah. And the fan club scene, I'll tell you about that. They have a wonderful Christmas party every year, where they invite all the fan club presidents to a party, which is basically given at the stadium, and all the players come to that party.
Really?
And
fantastic.
The players, yes, that's awesome. And the players pull the pints behind the bar.
Really?
And you get to get autographs and hang out, and it's free drinks and food all night. And,
wow.
And that's just the way Borussia Dortmund are as a club. I mean, it's much closer than it is in the Premier League. So there's 860 fan clubs now around the world, everywhere from Thailand to Vietnam to Australia. We had visitors from the Australian fan club from Wollongong on the Gold Coast a couple of weeks ago in London. And we helped them to get tickets to Dortmund for the first time. So basically they were coming all the way over from that, country which has been ravaged by all these wildfires and things. And then these guys went over to Dortmund to the Yellow Wall and just had the best time, in that huge match against Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yes,
I think it was 4-0.
4-0, yeah.
And it's just great. I mean, it's an amazing atmosphere, and it's wonderful to have this fan club that just stretches, and we are able to reach out to so many people on behalf of this really brilliant football club. I go and watch Pompey here, Portsmouth. We had a lovely match against Arsenal last night.
Yes,
and it's a very good atmosphere for English clubs, but it's nothing really like the Yellow Wall in Dortmund. 26,000 is just phenomenal. I love going to watch Borussia Dortmund, and it's great representing them.
Definitely, and I was saying that very similar to the guys in the studio before we hit the news there, before you joined us on the show, in that it's quite difficult to do. I mean, my first trip there, and it was all very much exciting, and the whole. I think the biggest disappointment I had was going back home thinking I've got to go and watch English football after experiencing the atmosphere. Does that, maybe that sounds a bad thing to say, but just experiencing that whole fan culture in Germany, and we're touching on that a bit more in a minute, but is that the right thing to say? In that you just mentioned how you love going to see Dortmund, and I've been to one game now, and I can't wait to go back out there, but it's just so very different. How would you try and explain it to somebody that hasn't been out there, that follows football in this country?
Well, I suppose in a way, I mean, the fact it sort of starts with the fact that I did a TV show with Sky Sports, where we basically did a price comparison between going to watch Arsenal at the Emirates and going to watch Borussia Dortmund over in Germany, and we basically worked out that I could save myself £40 by travelling out to Germany and staying over one night, compared to travelling from Portsmouth to the Emirates in London. Including the train fare and the match ticket and so on. So, and then having a drink and buying a scarf and so on. So, in essence, I suppose we've got 300 members, and over the last 7 years we've run the fan club together here, we basically have just found that everyone has had the same experience of, it starts with you fly out to Germany, you pay £20 or £25 for your ticket, and you already think, all right, this is good, because, I mean, even at Portsmouth, you're paying £25, so it's cheaper than going to League One, which is the third tier of football. And then you get out there, and then you can have a beer, you can have a smoke, everyone's singing, not just some people are singing, but everyone's singing. And I'm used to a very, very good atmosphere at Fratton Park. I feel it's one of the best in the country. It's a very close, small ground, and people really enjoy themselves.
Well, I'm similar to you, Ben, because I'm a Palace fan.
Yeah.
So
that's good. Yeah.
So Palace try and do similar, and Portsmouth are pretty loud and vocal, and Palace had tried to do a similar thing in the Premier League, but obviously to a completely different level after experiencing Dortmund. It's just it's miles apart.
That's what I feel. So I feel like basically, you've got a whole weekend away, you're paying £20 to get in, you're having a beer. The people in Germany are very welcoming and friendly, and they're very into their football, and they like the fact that English people are coming over. You just get over there, and the atmosphere, the choreographies, which are extraordinary. You will have seen the choreographies, is extraordinary. And that sense of unity, the biggest ultras fan community, because I know you've got some ultras at Crystal Palace as well, is called the Unity. And I feel that fits really well, because it is a sense of unity. It's a sense of real kind of togetherness at Borussia Dortmund. And you just, you arrive in this quite drab city, which is probably a bit like Sheffield. It's steel and cold city. And, you've seen it yourself. It's quite an ordinary city.
It is. It's
black and yellow everywhere. The shop windows and the, and then on match day it's like 80,000 people. The city only has 400,000 residents, so it's like 1 in 5 people are going to the match. And what a great stadium! Really is. It's a fantastic football ground and a fantastic football city. Really, that's what I feel. That's what I like about it.
And that's exactly the feeling I've come back with from Dortmund, and those very same things. I mean, I don't think anybody, no offence to Dortmund, but nobody would travel to Dortmund for any other reason, because, like you mentioned, there's not an awful lot there. It's probably not. It's not a place that you would go as a tourist, but just the whole sense of arriving there. The town the city was alive as soon as we got there. Through Dortmund fans, the yellow and black shirts were everywhere, and just that whole good feeling, and I felt a togetherness there as well, because the whole everyone was there in plenty of time before kick-off, around the ground, milling around, and even afterwards. It was just a fantastic atmosphere all around, and just the whole general feeling of I never felt out of place, and I don't speak any German at all, but I didn't feel out of place at all at any point in the time. I felt very welcome, and just thoroughly enjoyed my time there, and really looking forward to going back. So the beer
is good.
Yeah. The beer's very good. The beer's very good, and the food is very, very good as well. So all in all, like you say, the price of the ticket makes a huge difference. But that is some stat when you say that you could actually it costs you less from travelling from Portsmouth to Arsenal than it would do to go to Dortmund. That explains a lot about the difference between the two. Sorry, the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah, it would cost you less to go to Germany. Definitely.
Well, because the thing is, the flights are really cheap. I mean, you go on Ryanair or EasyJet, and as you saw yourself, and you can get a return flight to Dortmund for about £40.
Yep.
And then the only annoying thing is actually having to pay for the coach, the airport coach, National Express, which of course, being England, is always a rip-off, and it ends up costing you more to actually get from Portsmouth to Stansted Airport.
Yeah.
Than it actually does to fly over. And then, I usually just stay at a youth hostel. It only costs about £20, and then the match tickets cost me £20.
Yep.
Flights cost me £40, and all in all, it's about £100. And I've had a night away, a weekend overseas, and I've seen a new league. Had a new football experience. About that sort of ground hopping thing.
Well, I think you can get a pie and chips at the Emirates for about the same amount, actually. So I think I know where I'll be going. This is Ben. This is Tom here. I just wanted to interject because you guys have been fawning and gushing about Borussia Dortmund. It sounds amazing. And Windsor and I in the studio here didn't quite get the invite for Jay's trip to Dortmund, so we're very jealous. But we will be going out there soon.
It was a scouting mission. That was. It was a scouting mission. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Advanced patrol.
We follow the Bundesliga with great interest, and obviously it's a lot more interesting now because, especially this season, Bayern haven't quite been the dominant force that they have been for so many years, and the great players we talked about, Sancho and Haaland, and the great players that are exciting players that are doing it in Europe and in the Bundesliga for Dortmund, but. Obviously, our news has been dominated by the other things going on in the Bundesliga, and we wondered if you could share some context behind what's going on with the fan ultras and with play being suspended in numerous games, and kind of give us a bit more context as to what that's like and kind of how you feel about it in your position as a president of a fan club and where you sit with it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much. Nice to talk to you, Tom. I think so. Basically, one of the things I do is I run the Facebook page, and basically what that involves is by trade I'm a journalist and also a English-German translator in the sports field.
Right.
So quite ideally suited, I guess, to being able to transfer knowledge between the languages and cultures. And so, in essence, what I'm trying to do with the Facebook page, which is Borussia Dortmund Fan Club London on Facebook, just give myself a little tiny pitch there.
Go for
it. Is basically to open the door to English fans to that kind of German football culture, which, as you said, Jay, is quite a different football culture in that it's more open and it's very vociferous and excitable and the other thing about it is that there's I think what I've seen over the years is that people are really attracted to the fact that German football clubs are majority owned by the fans.
Yeah,
which is similar to something like AFC Wimbledon in this country or FC United in Manchester. So basically, but on a much bigger scale, because we're talking about the equivalents of Liverpool, Arsenal, and so on. And so there is a real sense of ownership by the fans. I'm a shareholder of Borussia Dortmund. I own shares in the club. You get invited to meetings. You get invited to the annual general meeting. You get to vote on things, important things that are happening in the club, sense of direction, and that sense of togetherness and belonging, I think, is really, really important and really special. And I think it's something that we're missing in England in a lot of walks of life, but also in football as well. Because it's always been our game, and it's kind of been taken away by these big corporations.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm kind of, if you like, I'm in that against modern football vein. So it's exact. To answer your question, it's exactly that. In Germany, they're unlike in the UK. All the clubs except for 3 are owned by the fans, or the fans are shareholders in the clubs, and as I said, they get to make decisions about the direction of the club, which is an amazing feeling to be part of that, because and basically what's happened is that a couple of corporate big corporations have come in. Red Bull, the energy drink people being one. They've basically bought themselves a 7th-tier football club, and then in Leipzig, in one of the biggest cities in Germany, in the former Eastern Germany, and they've basically created an artificial football club, much like they did in Salzburg or in New York or other places, and they've basically just implanted a massive sort of MK Dons, two fingers MK Dons sort of equivalent, and just sort of said, like it or lump it, we're here to stay. And they've just invested more and more and more money. Than they've gone and got themselves Julian Nagelsmann as their coach, who's one of the most gifted and talented coaches, who came incidentally from Hoffenheim, who were involved in that incident this weekend, which you're asking about. And then basically, so what's happened basically is Hoffenheim's the same thing. It was a little village club until 10 years ago. Then the owner of SAP, one of the largest software companies in the world, basically came along. He's invested hundreds of millions in this club. And, back in the day, someone like Jack Walker doing it at Blackburn Rovers, no one batted an eyelid here in England.
Yeah.
But in Germany, it's a complete outrage. It's just a total taboo. It's like a no-no. You don't just buy a new club or found and then expect to win the title or be up there. Germany is all about tradition. It's all about tradition. It's all about fan culture, sense of belongingness. And the fans are livid. They're absolutely livid at this construct that Red Bull have put together, RB Leipzig. I saw a guy at the gym the other day wearing an RB Leipzig shirt, and I said, "Oh, you don't like Bundesliga then?" He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because he's wearing a bloody RB Leipzig shirt." It's the most hateful. Yeah. It's horrible. Yeah. So basically what happened exactly on Saturday was that, and this has been happening regularly for the last few seasons, is that the fans have been vociferously shouting their hatred and putting up banners against Dietmar Hopp, the owner of SAP Software, and basically saying that, rather dead than be a Hoffenheim fan. And I'll tell you frankly, you saw how friendly Dortmund is.
Yeah.
When the Leipzig fans came down to Dortmund the first time, when they first got promoted, it was about 3 seasons ago, they were literally, the Dortmund fans were like showering the RB Leipzig fans with pellets and rocks and stuff, and this is absolute mayhem. Honestly, the Bundesliga fans just don't want to go the route that the Premier League has gone. They want our football to belong to us. They don't want football to be taken over by big corporations and offshore businesses. It's just not what Germany. It's not what they want. They don't want that.
As a fan,
there's the 50+1 rule, right?
Yes,
so it means that fans basically own 51% of the clubs.
Yeah. As a fan, and obviously vociferously fighting against it, and as much as they can, but from what you've seen what's happened to the Premier League over the last 20, 30 years,
Shocking.
do you think that there's an inevitability that with the implementation of your Leipzigs and teams like that, and the inevitable lure of money will the Bundesliga start to be tempted by the commercialization of the global sport and go that way, or do you think that the stubbornness of the supporters groups will remain firm and keep the tradition?
Well, let me put this to you. I was writing. I'm a journalist, and I was writing an article today for the Daily Mail about Dortmund and the way the club is run. And if you look at Borussia Dortmund, they they've got zero debt on their balance sheets. They turn over €500 million euros a year, and they make a profit of £30 million. Now that is pretty impressive by anyone's measure.
Yeah.
And if you look at Manchester United in comparison, they've got £400 million of debt on their balance sheet. I don't want to get all financial with you, but I mean, which would you rather be if you were a supporter?
Yeah.
You know?
Totally
I
agree.
think that as long as German football clubs are run in a very sound and solid way, and they can continue to compete at the very highest level, they will continue to be much more democratic. And I think that, you know, there are other countries like Sweden, Argentina, and so on, and even Barcelona is owned by the fans, by the members of the club. So, I mean, I think there are very good reasons why not to go down the Premier League route. I think the Premier League's impressive. I mean, it's done wonders for the England national team, who are now far better than they were when I was a kid. Yeah. But, you know, it's professionalisation of sport. But on the other note, I think there's enormous amounts to be said for fan-led football. And, you know, Crystal Palace is a good example. AFC Wimbledon is a good example. You know, when AFC Wimbledon actually make it, it will restore a lot of hope in the game. But I do feel as if a lot of that hope has been lost in England. You know, you just go down to Arsenal. I go there with a friend regularly, and, you know, you get this experience of, oh, you know, we don't know the people who stand next to us or sit next to us on the stands anymore because they're from Hong Kong or Japan or whatever. And, I mean, there's no issue about people coming from Asia, so it's absolutely welcome. But it's just not the same when people don't know the songs and they've never been to the ground before. You know, it's just, I just don't think it's going in the right direction. That's why I love going to Pompey, because Pompey is very old school English football, really, frankly.
Totally agree. And, you know, having experienced what I've experienced out in Dortmund and coming back to watch Premier League football, I love Palace. I supported Palace for a good number of years, and, you know, will always still go and support my team. But there's just something. It's not jealousy. It's a whole what could have been kind of thing, you know, from a Premier League perspective, because it's kind of a real feeling. And there's a lot of fans in the UK, in England, that actually feel in a very, very similar way, in that, you know, the feeling of clubs having sold their soul for all this money, and it's very much diluted what the fan experience probably should be. And fair play to, you know, to German football and the Bundesliga for it being like it is, and I'm just hoping it continues for a long time to come. I really do.
I think so, and I think, I mean, as you saw, basically what happened, just to come back to that incident last Saturday, was that the Bayern were leading 6-0, and it was getting pretty out of control, the kind of like the banners and the hatred and so on against Hoffenheim. And then what happened was that the game was actually stopped several times, 3 times by the referee, because of, you know, pyros going off and so on. And basically, the last 12 minutes of the game, the Bayern and Hoffenheim players, literally, having protested, gone over to the ultras and tried to stop them from setting off flares and stuff. They then just kicked the ball around, just literally for the last 12 minutes. So I think, I mean, you know, it is having an influence on the game, and it's a little bit like the whole racism and xenophobia thing here in England. You know, it's kind of like there is a kind of a line between what's going on the pitch and what's going on in the stands, and and sometimes it is crossed, you know. But I think people are very fierce in Germany about wanting to protect their game and keep it their game, and also keep the prices down, you know. And if they can do it, and they can still run the clubs at a profit, fair dues. I mean,
Definitely.
Why do you need to pay £100 for a ticket? I mean, which families can still afford to take 2 or 3 kids to the game when it's £100 a ticket?
What is
ridiculous?
What is the capacity at Dortmund?
82,000, and
82,000.
they've got 55,000 season tickets.
Wow.
and season tickets. I've been on the waiting list for 5 years, and I'm at 20,000 on that.
But let's move forwards then. Looking ahead for Dortmund this season, you're in a good place. You're in third place, 4 points behind Bayern Munich, if I remember correctly.
Yep, 1 point behind RB Leipzig after their draw last weekend.
Well, here's hoping that you can at least finish above them. But you play Bayern at home on the 4th of April, which is bound to be a thrilling encounter. And before that, even you got the second leg in Paris, leading 2-1.
That is exciting. Honestly, that really is exciting. I was in Barcelona in November. Right. I went out for my birthday with my nephew and my brother. It was wonderful. Camp Nou, but the Barca game, the PSG game is going to be unbelievable if we get through. Wonderful.
Yeah. So it's exciting times. Do you feel that you can catch Bayern this season?
Like every fan, you're looking at the last 12 games or so, and you're kind of counting up all the points and so on. And I can only really see about 2 games where there is. I mean, Dortmund. We've got to win. It's an absolute must-win.
Definitely,
because I don't see Bayern dropping 3 points pretty much. And if it comes down to 1 point, then I think Dortmund will probably end up. I think what we've seen with RB Leipzig, and they also had a draw at Gladbach as well, and that they are not as consistent yet. They're going to be strong next season, I think, but they're not quite as consistent. And I think what was quite shocking was that Lewandowski being up for the next 4 weeks, but Bayern still went on a 1-6-0.
Yeah, that's a bit scary, isn't it?
But Bayern are still there. And remember that they're currently being coached by Hansi Flick, who was assistant coach after Niko Kovac was fired earlier in the season.
Yeah.
So Bayern is pretty scary, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But I think Dortmund's time is coming, and I really, really hope they can do it with Jadon Sancho while he's still there, because Jadon, it would be wonderful to think that he could come away with having won a title in Germany. And I think every neutral observer, is really looking forward to Dortmund winning it. Am I going to make a prediction and say Dortmund are going to win the title? I think that would be a very brave thing to do, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first.
I think there's a good chance.
Winning the title. So as we wrap up this interview, Ben, you're speaking to us on a night where Liverpool have lost their third game in a row in the third different competition, losing 2-0 to Chelsea tonight. So clearly that means Klopp's job is at risk. Would you take him back?
We would take him back in a flash. He is Mr. Borussia. He recently launched our chief executive's Aki Watzke's book biography, and actually Kloppo's got a book out called Bring the Noise, and the relationship between Klopp and Dortmund is absolutely outstanding. He's got a wonderful house which I visited, which is just outside Dortmund, and you'll never believe it, but his house number is 13. And 13 is the main block in the ultras in the yellow wall. And his number is black and yellow on the outside of his house.
So Dortmund through and through then?
Oh, definitely. Jurgen Klopp is a legend, yeah, definitely. He's absolute legend.
Yeah. Well, Ben, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you coming on to talk to us about Dortmund, the fan club as well. Where can people get hold of you if they're listening and want to join the Dortmund fan club that you run?
Yep, the Borussia Dortmund Fan Club London on Facebook. Basically, if you want to get tickets or you want to go out and watch a game in Dortmund or just find out the latest news. We're on Facebook, basically.
Fantastic. Well, we'd love to have you on the show again to talk Bundesliga. We'll catch up off air. But thank you very much for joining us. It's been great talking to you about Dortmund and reliving my great weekend. And I'll be out there again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I look forward to that. It'd be great to talk to you again about some of the goings-on at Westfalenstadion. You have to get used to that one. It's not the Signal Iduna Park, it's Westfalenstadion. That's the old name of the stadium. Cheers.
Fantastic.
Great
Cheers,
to be
Ben.
on the show.
Thank you.
Cheers.